Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the launch of Bound, a memoir of making and remaking by Maddie Ballard. We're joined today by the author of this book, and I'm so delighted that you're all here to witness, well, one of the many launches. We've had quite a few already, but you're to witness the virtual launch of Bound, a book which has been really, well, it's been a cause of much excitement in the Emma Press team, and hopefully now, amongst many people. We've been working on it for a while, and my copy has only arrived, I think, 2 days ago. So it's been so delightful just seeing the book out in the world, seeing the posts about it, and I'm so excited to hear Maddie read from the book and to have a discussion as well. So the way this is going to work, I'll do some proper introductions and then talk a bit about how the book came to be. And Maddie's going to read one extract to give you a taster. Then we'll have Q&A, so I've prepared some questions. If you have any questions in the meantime, do feel free to put them in the Q&A bits, or you can put them in the chat and I'll try and scoop them up. Then Maddie will read another extract, and then that will be the end. So we'll continue. Bound is a collection of essays, the sort of memoir about sewing. That would be my snappiest way of describing it. But as the tagline says, a memoir of making and remaking. So it's a really thoughtful book about, well, as it says at the beginning, a love story about making clothes, making your own wardrobe, learning. And it's the books, the book came to us through the call for submissions. I'll ask Maddie a bit more about it later, but I had a very long period of my life where I was sewing a lot, to sort of pause for a bit. So, and this book came to us in submissions while I was on maternity leave, so I had heard about it, and then I was very excited to be able to work on it. That will be more of the discussions later. I feel like I've already forgotten to just do introductions. I'm Emma Wright. I run the Emma Press, and I edit, and I sometimes illustrate, and I the cover and some illustrations for the book. And this is Maddie Ballard, the author, and I'm just going to read her bio out in case you don't know her already. So Maddie Ballard is a writer and editor of mixed Chinese heritage. Born in Syracuse, New York, she grew up in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and currently lives in Wellington. Bound is her first book. And Maddie has just come back from a UK tour, covering, I think, London, Birmingham, Bath, and maybe some other places. And I've heard about all these rapturous audiences, lots of booksellers being charmed, and I've heard so many excited reviews from people who've managed to read the book already. I'm so excited to be able to talk to Maddie this evening / early morning. And now I should hand over to you, Maddie, having talked for a very long time. Maddie, would you like to share some of your book with us?
Yes, I sure can. Thank you so much all for coming, and thank you, Emma, for wanting to publish the book. I'm still amazed and extremely appreciative that you had any interest, to be honest. It's been a really special experience. I'm going to read a chapter from the middle of the book that's called Silver Lining. It's about making a coat. Silver Lining. The first chill of autumn is in the air when I move in with Pawpaw. She urges me to hang my clothes in the wardrobe, but I don't want to take them out of the suitcase. On the first day, when I feel like hiding in a small dark space for hours, she makes me chicken for dinner and says with unbearable concern, "Lele, now you will not get married," to which I say, absolutely nothing. I decide to sew something complex and labor-intensive to keep my sadness only a shadow, while my hands make something of nothing. Several months ago, I decided I would make a fabric store poppy coat come winter, an oversized proper cold weather coat with a single button closure and a big soft rounded collar. It's not winter yet, but I'm cold all through, and half my things are still at the old flat, so I start the coat. Coats are my favorite type of garment because they represent a kind of escapism. Auckland is never really cold enough for a coat, but nonetheless, wearing one in grey July makes me think of snow falling on woolen shoulders, as it does in all the cities I'd like to live in. More importantly, wearing a coat means feeling held. A coat is protection against weathers external and internal. I've never been good at sewing slowly. It's too exciting to go fast, but I don't get a choice here. I print the pattern in A0 at a local copy shop. Then, on Instagram, I look at poppy coats made by sewists around the world. Poppies cut from old woolen blankets, shirling with checked lining, lilac cashmere. I read all the captions and take notes on recurring advice. Size down 2 to 3 sizes, practice the pockets, use a point turner and press every seam. I lay out my fabric, a heavy brushed grey wool plaid, bought months ago on sale, and steam it with patience. Perhaps for once I will do it all as I should. The poppy coat is the most difficult garment I've ever made. It takes me a whole morning to learn to make belt pockets, those funny formal rectangular pockets you get on school blazers or the backs of suit trousers. I smooth my grandma's sputtery iron over many meters of interfacing, a lengthy process with pattern pieces this big. I cut my lining, a liquid silvery viscose that slithers wildly under the chalk on the hard white tiles of the bathroom floor, the pattern weighted with library books. By the time I have sewed the shell together and it looks like a coat with functioning pockets and half the collar, I've been sitting at the machine for 7 hours, so long I can barely straighten my neck anymore. The wool is too heavy to press the seams open properly, and the bobbin thread keeps snapping because I'm sewing 3 thick layers too quickly, and on second thought, perhaps I've snipped just 1 millimeter too far into the corner on the back of one of the welt pockets, which means I'll need to patch the back before I put the lining in. But the coat is a coat, made for my body by my hands. Like gardening, sewing is an investment in the future, in what sort of person your future self will be, and how she will feel about her body, and what she will want to wear. I choose this grey plaid and cut it to my size, thinking unashamedly of myself and how I want to feel, which is not how I feel now. More fundamentally, as writer Sophie Tannhauser puts it, sewing something for yourself implies belief in a future self. Pressing the lining today means I will stitch it into the outer shell tomorrow. Inserting a pocket now means one day it will hold my hand. I clip into the collar corners, learn and execute the finicky couture of buttonhole stitching by hand, wrestle determinedly with the petulant lining. Sewing means proving to myself I haven't given up on either work or joy. My cousin Lisa is also making a coat. We share one sewing relative, her grandmother, my great-grandmother, who died when we were small. But both of us remember her knotted hands, which cooked chow fun for 60 years and tended the garden and made the whole family's winter coats. Lisa is making a paper-cut patterns Nova coat of 2 contrasting black and brown tweeds. Her coat is minimalistic, a clean cocoon shape, while mine is sweeping and romantic. She reminds me that another sensibility entirely is possible. We sew our coats together, and on the days we are apart, we send each other progress pictures, us in half coats, in single sleeves, threads bird nested at hems, everything unfinished and promising. It is just what I want. Lisa finishes her coat before me and sends a picture taken in front of her bathroom mirror. She looks fantastic. It remains amazing to me that this silly little hobby of ours could turn out something that looks like an actual coat. When I next see her, she's wearing her coat out in the world, an idea made real. It looks as good as anything you could buy, but she shows me how, at the hem, where the lining meets the shell, there's a slight misalignment, a reminder it was made by inexpert hand. I think this is quite beautiful in her coat, but when I attach the lining of my own coat to the shell and it's similarly crooked, I feel annoyed. I hate this feeling, and this month I'm tired of my feelings, and after unpicking the seam twice, I end up letting it be. I move on to the next step, so eventually I can send Lisa a photo taken in front of Pawpaw's bathroom mirror. I don't know what to make of this slip of time. I rise each morning at 6, I read before work, I make small, simple meals. The rice cooker lisps beside the stove. The orchids pose stark and flowerless in the living room. The washing machine plays an irresistible electronica version of Die Forelle to announce the end of a cycle. I enjoy my enjoyable job, I save money, I have not one single drink, and in many ways I feel good. On the other hand, I still wake too early every single day in the middle of a panicked half-dream in which I am looking and looking, inside my suitcase, beneath the bed, in the drawer in the old apartment where I kept old keys and shopping bags, for something I've lost and cannot have back. The day I finished the coat, I've been living with Pawpaw for a month. She grew up in an era when you sewed not for pleasure but because you couldn't afford to buy clothes, and so she's amused by the coat saga. Every afternoon, she calls one of her many friends for a gossip about what so-and-so paid for her house, which family member has caught COVID now, and me. She still hasn't realized I can understand almost everything she says in Cantonese. I hear her telling everyone she knows that for some reason I'm making a coat and that she'd like me to stay. Thank you.
That was lovely, Maddie. And that's such a good choice to read. I was thinking that chapter covers so many of, well, it gives a taste of so many aspects of the book, and so many of the things that really spoke to me and I think speak to readers, including frustrations of sewing. When you say the slippery bits of the interlinings, like, terrible. And I know that the line about making clothes for yourself as an investment in your future, I remember Georgia quoting that to me quite early on, saying this had stayed with her for ages, or still stays with her. And then also sort of writing about mixed heritage, that's really lovely as well. I don't really have much of a relationship with my pawpaw. I think the language was a big thing, but so I don't know. There's something really nice about reading a relationship. Pawpaw with her mixed granddaughter. Like, I don't know. It's nice reading about it. And so lots of, and also a cool cousin as well. I loved the character of Lisa in the book, but not the character, the real person cousin, who just sings throughout the book and is such a jolly addition. That was a great choice and a great chapter. So I'm going to move on to my questions now. And again, just a reminder to the audience, if you do have any of your own questions that occur to you, feel free to put them in and I'll try to ask them to Maddie. So as I mentioned, Maddie sent the book in one of our calls for submissions while I was away. So I wasn't so looped into how it happened. So for myself, but I also think it'd be interesting. Can you tell us about how you put it together and what state was it in, and I think what made you send it to the Emma Press? Like, I'd love to hear about the origin story.
Well, I guess I had heard of the Emma Press quite a long time before that because I had read Nina Minga Powell's Tiny Moons and really loved that and thought it wasn't just like a beautiful text, but it was such a beautiful book. I thought the illustrations were gorgeous. It was like a lovely object. And so I think I followed you guys on Instagram or something. But I had not really, I sort of put together the submission by accident, if such a thing is possible. Like, I hadn't really premeditated on it. I had written the essay that I just wrote, that I just read to you guys, and just published it on my Substack. And a couple of people had said nice things about it, and I sort of thought maybe I have more to say about sewing, which was something that I'm still really into and was really into at the time. And so I kind of looked at your submission guidelines, and it was like I needed to provide 3 sample essays, and I didn't have any sample essays. I had the one. So I wrote 2 more and kind of hurriedly put together a proposal and sent it off and didn't think anything more about it. And then maybe like 8 or 9 months later, you came back to me and said that you liked the proposal and could I please send you the manuscript? And I thought, God, I don't have the manuscript. I physically didn't exist. So very like hurriedly and with great stress, but also joy, I sort of put together the rest of the book quite quickly and sent it in. So that's kind of, the sort of process for it. I'm in some ways still quite surprised that this ended up being a book I've written because it feels like it's all the things in it are things I've thought about for a long time, or just parts of my daily craft or whatever. So it's sort of strange that they are written down and available for other people to read about. But yeah, it was a lovely process.
Yeah, I know. I know objectively and from seeing it again and again, I know it's a really weird feeling having a book out there. Especially, well, just not especially, just like your thoughts and people are reading them and your thoughts are out there. It's not just people you've talked to, it's lots of people. But I hope that I don't know, in a few years' time as well, it feels like an overall positive experience, that you can stand by. I hope that you'll feel like you can stand by your words, and that really surprises me that you did a really, like, that's, I'd say that's the classic, you know, starting with one essay building it up to 3 and then writing the whole, that's like the by the skin of your pants kind of thing. So that's yeah, that's very impressive. And yeah, I can imagine very stressful. But also all of, like you say, all of the chapters and the thoughts that you develop throughout the collection, I thought you'd presumably been, you know, polishing this and crafting this for years. It really felt so, it feels so weighty. It's a short book, but every essay packs a punch, and all the thoughts and themes really stay with you. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Emma. That's very generous.
And yeah, okay. It's really interesting to think about. Yeah, because I just remember in the beginning, James and Georgia, and I guess maybe Kais and Christy were saying, oh, there's one about sewing, there's one about sewing. And I was like, sewing sounds good. And yeah, by the time I saw it, it was the full manuscript, so I didn't see any of that. But yeah. So now this is sort of the sewing chat bit. I thought it would be fun to ask you more about sewing than about the writing, so I hope that's okay. So can you share a bit about what you found challenging about first starting to make clothes? Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
I love that question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I think it was the 3D-ness of it. Like, I think most of my, well, I guess like my primary craft or like artistic thing is writing, which is very like, you sit there, you put the words on the page, it's very 2D, there's no like real world aspect to it. But I think, yeah, doing something A with my hands, and B that kind of involved like thinking about things in space and how they actually, I don't know, how a flat thing becomes a 3D thing, I found really difficult. I think, you know, I don't know if they do this in the UK, but in New Zealand, they make you do this test when you're in primary school where you have to look at the flat lay like plan of like a cube or something and be able to tell from looking at the plan what sort of 3D shape it will fold into. I hope I'm not making this up. I think I remember doing this in primary school, and I used to be really terrible at those. And I feel like in some ways sewing is exactly that. Like, you get your flat pattern and then you have to sort of visualize how this random shape becomes a sleeve or something. Yeah, so I found that really challenging. And I think also like a lot of the terminology, there are a lot of sewing terms that I just hadn't heard before. And I think they're quite magical. And kind of when you get to know some of those words, it feels like, I don't know, this like secret magical other type of vocabulary. But yeah, initially when I looked at like sewing instructions or a pattern or whatever, a lot of it just felt like I had no idea what was going on. Like, what was bias binding? What did it mean to like slip stitch something? What on earth was a toile? All of that. So I think there's a bit of a learning curve with that. But I really enjoyed it. I think the challenges can feel, I think sometimes that can kind of stop people from getting started, but I don't think it should. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the many things I love about the book is that it really captures how hard learning a new thing can be. And I think this is a thing I think about quite a lot, about how, you know, and I don't know, sometimes, you know, you get to your 20s, and sometimes, you know, some people are very good at everything. And then sometimes you come across something that's really hard. Not necessarily, that's obviously not at all relatable, but you know, sometimes, you know, I've thought about some people, I've thought, now this is hard, and it's but other things were hard as well, but you don't remember, like, you know, learning to eat is hard when you're a baby, like lots of things are hard. And then there might be a period of your life when maybe things you don't feel that labor of trying to learn a skill, and then, you know, and then you reach a thing, maybe it's like learning to drive or learning a language or learning a new job, and it really hits you how hard it is. And yeah, but then it's also rewarding, but it's sometimes can be quite surprising how long it takes, because sometimes some things come more easily than others, and yeah, you can just really track it through the book of your confidence growing, and yeah, by the end you're just like you're freewheeling, you're hacking, and yeah, that's it's really joyous to see. And yeah, and I remember from when I used to make clothes, just yeah, constantly finding it so irritating that I couldn't just imagine something and just, you know, like to make it. And sort of, I guess I wanted to sculpt it, but you can't. You've got to you've got to tuck, and then you have little bits that aren't smooth, and
it's very relatable. Yeah.
and then sort of another thing I remembered was sort of the opposite. I remember there's one of our poets, Padraig Regan, author of You Seemed Alive and Altogether Real poetry pamphlet. I remember they said that they're thinking about painting and how it's the challenge of making a 3D thing flat. And it took me ages to understand what that meant. And then I got it. So it's, yeah, both things are hard. It's hard to change dimensions.
It is. I think it's also like the older I get, the more I think it's important to have something in your life that you're not already good at. And like I feel like I'm looking for something new now, because I feel like I've got to a point with sewing where I feel much more confident than I did when I started. But yeah, I think there's something about like not having the hubris to think that you're that you can just do everything. And kind of, yeah, I think as an adult it's very easy to avoid things that you're not already skilled at.
Yeah.
So I want to not do that.
Yeah, no, exactly that. I mean, yeah, I'm basically specifically thinking about a very clever ex-boyfriend who really struggled with driving. I just remember thinking, yeah, many things were hard, but also I found recently it's like I keep having to learn new languages, and yeah, it's yeah, it's so slow and so hard, and I'm so frustrated. But over the course of years, I'm feeling it going in, and that you know, like I've cried in my lessons before, just out of frustration, which is sort of ridiculous in a way. But yeah, I just because I know how slow it is, and I'm so annoyed. Like I could learn faster, I could learn better, and but yeah, but I think it is healthy. I think it's good, because I guess presumably whatever part of the brain is tracking this stuff wasn't being used before. I don't know how brains work, but it feels healthy that it's something's moving around.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm going to integrate one question that's about sewing, and then I'm going to ask a writing question that's come up in a more writing section. So a question from Alice in the audience says, I really loved the movement within the chapter you read. Did you find that having the sewn garments as a chosen, lovingly made holder of the body and the self made it easier to approach complex questions more freely, spaciously, and generously? I'd say this is a hard question. So if you need time or you want to circle back to it, that's okay. How do you feel?
I think that's a beautiful question. Thank you, Alice. I would like to think that it helped. I think the thing about sewing a garment is it takes such a long time to make anything, even if it's like a tank top. It's like going to be at least an hour and a half. That I think that naturally having all that time at your machine thinking about what you're doing and how difficult it is and what it means kind of does lend itself to thinking about complex questions, because just by dint of the fact that it takes time, you sort of are forced to reconcile some things in your head. So I would say it does help. I think in terms of like actually writing the chapters and wanting them to have that movement in them, sometimes I did feel like I had to sort of introduce it a little bit artificially. But I think that's one of the joys of like writing as a craft, is that you can, I don't know, I think when you're editing a piece, you can tell where it flags a little bit, or when you're not quite getting to the heart of the thing you want to say. And it's nice to have, I think, having a beautiful, lovingly made object to describe kind of lends itself well to switching tack a little bit or introducing a new idea. But yeah, you can just sort of, I don't know, I did sort of play around with things a little bit, which I enjoyed. Yeah.
A lovely answer. Thank you, Alice, for the question. Everyone's so clever. This is, yeah. So actually, this does lead in quite well to the next question from the audience. This is from Laura, who says, one thing I'm always curious about with memoir and creative nonfiction is how writers choose what and how much to share of themselves in the book. So reading Bound, I found it so personal and brave. How did you approach this, Maddie? Did you find it cathartic or challenging, or perhaps both at times? Thank you, and thank you for writing this wonderful book.
Thank you so much, Laura. That's another lovely question. I would say there are definitely things I left out, but mostly I think the things I left out are to protect other people, which I guess is like always a major ethical question when you write something incredibly nonfiction. The boyfriend who's in the beginning of it, who I break up with partway through the book in that chapter about the coat, knows all about it, and we've talked about it in some depth, and we're on good terms. So I think that's okay. But there were other people who kind of might have appeared in these chapters, and I have chosen to sort of like leave some of them out or to sort of soften the edges because I wanted to protect their feelings, and I think that's important to think about. In terms of like the personal or brave aspect, that's very generous and kind that you think it's personal brave. I feel like in some ways, like writing it was cathartic and is an attempt to kind of think through some questions that I think I'll be thinking about forever. I guess like principally the question that concerns everybody about their own life is like, what sort of person am I, and what sort of life should I be leading, and what's important to observe, and what values do I have? And I think those can come across as very kind of self-indulgent, or I don't know, like they're very insular questions, and I think that can sometimes be received as being self-indulgent, but I don't think it is, because I think everybody has them about their life, and I think often the answers are similar across different people, even if it feels like you're alone inside your little box. And so I kind of wanted to explore some of the things that I know like people in my circle have also considered, or people I've come across, or people I've met. I think like, for instance, the element of like kind of cultural heritage and trying to figure out what it means to be mixed race, what it means to live in Aotearoa, and for my ancestors to have come from like two completely different places and probably not to have liked each other very much. What that means, I think, is I'll be trying to figure that out forever. But I think lots of people are in the same boat, and I wanted to kind of explore it in text so that it seems like a more normal conversation to have, or something that it's like acceptable and valuable to consider. So I don't know if I can really consider that brave. Like I think it's more of a it was selfish also. And I really valued having the space to explore that on the page, and I hope that other people will get something from it.
Yeah, I think all those questions that you raise, they feel very welcoming. So it doesn't feel self-indulgent. It feels like you're, well, brave to share your thoughts, but also it feels like an invitation to think further, but also maybe not to be, not to shy away from thinking about some of these difficult things. I'm thinking particularly about the chapter about consumption and the footprint of fabric. And you acknowledge that it's difficult and possibly impossible, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't think about it or interrogate yourself and keep interrogating issues and yourself. And I think that's really lovely. Like that feels like a book that lodges questions in your brain and will keep it's very encouraging for those thoughts in it. And I think that is partly, that's because of your bravery in writing it like this. I won't underestimate that. I think it's hard, and it's easier perhaps to not write things. So so I've got a couple more questions. If anyone else has any more, feel free to ask. Mine are quite simple ones, so I'm not going to dig too deep. So if you want to dig deeper, not to encourage you to, but anyway. But my next question is, what are some of your favorite fabrics? Whether general ones to work with, or if you have some in your stash that you're looking forward to using. Yes, I'd love to hear.
That's such a lovely question, Emma. I feel like it's a very standard choice these days, but I think my favorite fabric still is linen. Mostly because I think it's very beautiful. I love the texture. I think it's easy to sew. And I also really like that it is, on the whole, quite a sustainable fabric. So I don't feel kind of an inherent guilt about using it. Whereas I feel like often if I'm using cotton, which I also do really like, there is a bit of a question of like where it comes from and how it was produced, which can sort of, I don't know, it's something to consider. Whereas I feel like with linen, usually it's a little bit more sustainable. But I think something about linen feels very luxurious, even if it's just like the most basic linen you can get. There's something about the hand feel and the way that it crumples that I find really beautiful and special. I think also though, that's like a great fabric for making like a blouse or a summer dress or something. But I think if you want like a super special occasion fabric, I don't think you can go past silk organza. I've just recently made like a very intricate dress that has all these different panels of silk organza in it. And I was quite nervous about it because the fabric was very expensive and I wasn't sure how it would behave under the machine or if I'd need to get like a special needle or anything. But actually, it was very easy to work with, and it's just so like ethereal and gorgeous, and yeah, something about that was really special. I think I would like to sew with more silk organza in the future.
Was that the dress you were wearing at the craft house? That was
Yeah, I wore it in London. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I thought, I thought that might be a creation. It's very beautiful.
Thank you.
And then my final question before you read another extract is what writing and sewing are you working on at the moment?
Well, in terms of sewing, what am I doing at the moment? I have just finished making a very ludicrous corduroy suit on the request of my friend Rose, who's also a sewist. She made one in like neon green corduroy, and I made one in bright blue corduroy, which was very out of the box for me. I don't know when I'm going to wear a corduroy suit, but she proposed it, and I thought it would be really fun, and we did have a lot of fun making them together. So I've just done that, but I don't know what's next on the agenda. I think I would like to revisit some of the things that I made a few years ago that I don't wear anymore, and maybe turn them into some kind of other garment. When I first started sewing, which would have been like 2020, I was like head over heels for beautiful fabric and bought all sorts of fabric that I didn't really have the skills to work with. And I made some garments that I think are really beautiful in terms of like the material they're made from, but they could use some technical work. And some of them I no longer wear. So I want to see if there's a way to cut those into other garments or repurpose them somehow. In terms of writing, I feel, I don't know if I should reveal this because then I'm accountable. I'm trying to write a novel. It may all go terribly, and I may in like 6 months be like, I'm never going to do fiction again. But I've had a lot of fun doing it so far. So maybe we'll see. That's kind of what the project is at the moment.
I was going to say, I think everyone here can clearly tell you're destined for even greater things than this book. So yeah, no, I know it's actually, people don't like it when you say, of course, it's going to be brilliant, but yeah, I feel like, yeah, whatever you write next is going to be incredible. But I know that writing a novel is very hard, so best of luck with working on that. And also
Thanks,
revisiting your old clothes.
yeah.
That's, I think, yeah, I think that's a challenge. You have to look at what you did before, and yeah, you have to go back, and yeah, so that's also an interesting experience. So I'm going to invite you to read a final extract, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. I'm going to read a chapter which is called Care Instructions, and it's about making a dressing gown for one of my really close friends. Care Instructions. It's her birthday in 3 weeks, and I don't know what to get her. We are recent friends of only a year's standing, but I think she will be in my life forever. I would like to give her something that wishes the length of that forever. I decide to make her a dressing gown, like a full-size, portable hug. I choose a cobalt blue linen, her favourite colour, so intense it hurts to look at, and spend more than I should, but I've decided money is for spending on loved ones. When the fabric arrives a week later, I wash it and hang it to dry on the line, dimpled with sun. It's almost too beautiful to cut. I cut more carefully than usual, bothering to iron first, and lay the fabric out on the flat tiles of the bathroom rather than just the carpet. I trace the pattern off my own shop-bought dressing gown, then add a back pleat so it will float behind her, and shorten the sleeves a little so they won't trail when she's making her coffee. I cut tiny rectangles of fabric to make belt loops and a loop for hanging. I cut vast pockets for holding snacks and notebooks and her phone when she needs to flip the pancakes. I remember all the little details I would skim past if I were making this for myself. I stitched care into every seam. On our free afternoons together, as time-rich students, we walked everywhere with our eyes wide open. We gathered flowers to press, drank the coastline. We sat with little cups of coffee and licked cinnamon and sugar off our fingers. Sometimes we went to one of the luxury shops in town, scented with leather and perfume. We had no money for elegant things, linen sheet sets, handmade bowls, but we looked until we were full. When we met, I thought she was unknowable, shy, a little hesitant. But I read her work and she read mine, and we became close. I learnt that she was commuting each week from Palmerston North, a town 2 hours away from Wellington. My flatmate was going away, so I offered the spare bed, and she accepted. Each Tuesday she arrived with her bag, toothbrush, change of clothes, notebook, swimsuit, and we traded the week's news and drank tea. We learnt poems by heart. We walked shrieking into the sea in the middle of winter. We split the cost of dinner. We roasted chickpeas under olive oil until rich and jammy. We soy-cured eggs and split them over steaming bowls of noodles and greens. Together we rolled the dough for cardamom buns, inhaling the spice until heady. She never arrived without bringing something she had grown. Tiny purple potatoes, cordial made from the elderflowers in her garden, a bucket of lemons. Before this year, she had planned to be a market gardener. Near the university, she stopped along the path to say, "So beautiful, the kowhai, look how much wild fennel." Her eyes saw the ruru in the trees, no matter the depth of darkness. We spent our whole lives in different cities and 1 year in the same. Now, our degree's finished, she's heading north while I stay here. When I ring, I hear the sunnier half of her news. She's been making chili oil, building a new bookshelf, sewing, by hand, a seersucker dress. Where she lives, in rural Maratoto, 7 hours' drive away, she is isolated. Her partner, a conservation ranger, is often away, and she hasn't found a job yet, isn't sure of the shape of her year. I don't like to think of her unsteady, surrounded by rain and bush. When I was unsteady this year, she took my hand, sat at the end of my bed and offered her quietness. "My love, you are brave," she said, held out my dressing gown. A dressing gown will hardly fix everything, but I make it with maximum fierceness. I French seam everything so all the raw edges are held. I backstitch firmly so nothing will unravel. What was loose and vague becomes reliable, fixed. When I'm nearly finished, I embroider one looping cursive initial, L, in red on the inside of the collar, to be held against her skin. Dear heart, I'm saying, you are brave. Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. That's another lovely chapter. And yeah, there's so much love in this book. Lots of things, and that's really many of these things stay with you, and all those details about all the details you put into the dressing gown are like French seaming, all of those lovely. So this is the end of the event. Thank you so much, Maddie, for sharing your book with us, sharing your thoughts and your answers. Thank you to all the audience for joining us, all the different places you are. If you don't have the book already, you can order a copy from the web shop and putting the link in the chat, or go to your local bookshops and demand they stock it if they don't already have it. And finally, I'll just say that in a couple of weeks, I'll be back on Zoom launching our final book of the year, which is a poetry pamphlet called After the Rights and Sandwiches by Kathy Pimlott. I'll put the link there as well, or you can find it on the Emma Press website. And yeah, I will bid you adieu. And thanks again, Maddie. And
thanks so much, Emma.
Okay, lovely. Okay, everyone. Okay, have a lovely evening / morning / afternoon. And
Bye.
okay, bye.